Jess said, thank you so much. I'm ready to dive in. And without further ado, I want to welcome Akeiva with us here at Next Stage. Welcome. So, why don't you tell us about yourself, Akeiva?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you all this evening. Really happy to be here and talk to you guys about topics that a lot of people find a little bit boring, but I personally find very exciting, which is budgeting and taxes. I am a certified financial planner. In my day job, I work with ultra high net worth clients and their families to help them manage their wealth. But outside of that, in my 5 to 9, as I like to call it, I run a financial literacy brand called The Bemused. And with this brand, we cater to generally young adults, but the young at heart are also welcome anytime. And we talk about all things personal finance, my husband and myself, primarily on YouTube is where you can find us hanging out. So I'm excited to be here and chat about one of my favorite subjects with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you. So we can just dive right in. And if, like Jess said, if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand throughout. You don't have to wait until the end, or you can just type it in the chat and we can take care of that for you if you'd like us to ask the question for you.
All right, perfect. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And you guys should be seeing it now. So give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Perfect. Let's get rolling. So, what we're here to do this evening, two main things. We're here to learn the tax issues you need to be aware of as an entrepreneur, because most people who are artists, a lot of people who are artists are also entrepreneurs. So we're going to learn how taxes work with that respect, and also learn how to create a budget that works for you, even if you have a regular or inconsistent income. So those are our two main goals for tonight. So hopefully that's what you came here expecting. And if you're excited, love to see your comments in the chat as we go along and post any questions that you have as we go along. I always try to leave a generous amount of time for questions. So that way, whether it's related to budgeting, taxes, or anything else related to personal finance, I'm here to be a resource and to help. So would love to leave a lot of time at the end. So think about those questions while we're going through as well. And how to get the most value out of our time together. I know Deidre told me before we hopped on that she had her notebook ready, and I'm encouraging you to do the same, to remove distractions as much as possible. I know we all have so much going on in our lives, especially as we're all at home during quarantine for the most part, but try to remove distractions and take notes if you'd like to as well, so you can get the most value out of our time together. So I introduced myself a little bit at the beginning, but I also like to highlight a few unique facts about me that really speak to the lens that I bring when I talk about money, when I talk about personal finance. First thing is that I am the proud daughter of immigrants. And, that really affects the way that I view money and my experience with it and background. So I always like to bring that up. I'm not perfect either. I have lots of student loans, currently an $80,000 student loan balance. My husband has student loans as well. Combined, we're about $160,000 in. So, we're on this personal finance journey together. As I mentioned, I am a financial planner and I'm also a financial educator. I have two roles that I really love a lot. I have a master's degree in financial planning, just a little bit of my on paper background, my expertise in financial planning. And I am one of the youngest CPAs and CFP professionals in the nation. So both of those credentials there. So that is just a little bit about me. I'm also the creator of Money 180, which is my financial literacy program, essentially. And so if you want to learn more about that and get more information, feel free to hit me up afterwards. All right, so let's dive in. Let's talk about taxes. Everybody's favorite subject, right? Those things we love to hate. We all got to do it, but it's not exactly fun all the time. But we're going to try to make it fun today and make it applicable to all of you here. So where I like to start with this is defining what a business is. What does it actually mean to have a business, to be an entrepreneur? Because a lot of times, myself included, I am a business owner, as I mentioned. We think of ourselves as we're doing this, we're making money here and there, but we don't truly think of ourselves as a business. So I always like to bring out the IRS's definition, which is the definition in my book that usually counts most when it comes to these topics. So we can really see what a business really is. So according to the IRS, a business is a trade or business is generally an activity carried on for a livelihood or in good faith to make a profit. So two key things within that sentence there: for a livelihood or in good faith to make a profit. So that differentiates it from a hobby where it's just something you do every now and again. You're not looking to make money from it. You're not looking to profit from it. But if it's something you're looking to make a livelihood from, to make a profit from, it's a business. And it's important to note that you actually don't need to make a profit to have a business as long as you have a profit motive, right? Which I'm sure all of us do. You know, we go into our respective fields to make money. As long as we have a profit motive, we have a business. And just a little bit of technicality is that if you turned a profit, you're making money, you're profitable in at least 3 of 5 consecutive years, the IRS will presume that you're engaged in it for profit by default. So, you know, they just want to make sure that these are bona fide business activities. A hobby, like I said, on the other hand, is where you're just doing it for fun. You might just be losing money doing it, but it's something you like to do, which I don't think most of us are. So if you fall into this bucket, which I'm sure a lot of us do, congratulations, you have a business. So now what, right? What happens now? Some tips right off the bat that I can give you in terms of differentiating your personal finances from your business finances. One tip I have is opening a separate bank account for your business. The expenses that are related to, you know, whatever it is that you do, most of you here in the artist community. So whatever expenses are related to that activity, have a separate bank account that those inflows and outflows, the money you make and the money you spend, go out of, separate from your personal, you know, expenses and income. It's a really great way to keep things streamlined and organized, especially when it comes to tax time. Makes your life a lot easier. Keep accurate, detailed records of all of your income, your related expenses, and any tax payments that you make during the year. So the thing about entrepreneurship is that our taxes that we pay are a little bit different from the average W-2 employee, right? And I will go into more detail later on about how exactly that works. But keep detailed records of these things because it also makes things a lot easier for tax time. And I have here some examples of some software that you can use that make it really easy to track these things separate from your personal expenses. So bookkeeping software like Wave, which is actually what I use. It's a free accounting software that you can use, pretty simple. You can plug in whenever you make money, whenever you spend something in the name of your business or your trade. It's a free software. QuickBooks is another one that I'm sure most of us have heard of. They're pretty much everywhere. That is a paid solution for the most part, but it is another great solution for keeping those records outside of your personal finances. And if you're working with an accountant, they will thank you for this. So now, what kind of expenses can I actually deduct for tax purposes? Got a question?
I just want to make sure that I'm tracking everything. So if I'm an artist and I get like 1099s for singing at a concert, and I also get W-2s for acting in a show, right? I can combine those things and just say I'm a business. And that's good. And just making sure I'm like processing, like I can say, yes, I'm a business.
Yes, for 1099 income, definitely. W-2s are a little bit different. For that, you're considered an employee of that business if you're getting a W-2. So that's a little bit different. You know, you'll probably have taxes deducted or withheld from whatever payment you get, you know, through that company. So W-2 income, 1099 income, a little bit different. But generally, anything on a 1099 is for your business purposes. W-2 wouldn't be included in that. Hopefully that makes the distinction.
No, that's great. I think because artists have the mix so often, that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out is like, if you've got the mix going on, should we be approaching everything as a business? Or is it, but I'm just going to put the business hat on and then we can talk about the mixed version later. But I just wanted to make sure.
Yes. And thank you for bringing that up and making that distinction because that is an important distinction. We'll talk about the types of forms that you usually will either have to issue or receive as an entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur later on as well. So some of the expenses you can deduct as a business owner. Really, it's any reasonable expenses necessary to run your business to make the money that you make as a business owner. So some common expenses would include things like software. So if you have a professional email or you have a website to promote yourself or your services or your brand, any equipment that you might use, any supplies you might have, if you're selling physical product, if you're in more of the physical space as an artist, for home office, or if you have a studio that you use specifically for business purposes or to practice or do whatever that you do, you can have a deduction potentially on your taxes for that. Education and training, if you need to up your skills in whatever your industry is, that is a deductible expense. Then professional fees, if you're working with an attorney in the course of business or an accountant, anything like that. Those are some common expenses, as well as travel or transportation. You have to travel to a gig or to an industry event or a conference or things like that. Those are all deductible expenses for tax purposes. So it's important to know these things because you don't want to miss out on any deductions that you might be able to get as a business owner. So these are just some examples, and there are, of course, many, many more. Really just anything that you can think of. If you're spending it in the name of your business, if you wouldn't have spent this money otherwise, it's probably a deductible expense as a rule of thumb. Yes, travel and transportation is a huge one. Yes.
Oh, and
all right, I'm going to address one question. Yeah, I just saw that pop up in the chat. From Rebecca, how does one fill out mileage reports and put them on taxes? So the IRS has a fixed amount of money that you can deduct based on the miles that you drive in the name of your business. I'm not sure exactly what it is for 2021, but you can easily Google it and say IRS mileage rate 2021, and you can see how much you can deduct per mile that you drive. And there are apps out there where you can differentiate your personal driving from business use and things like that to make it easier to track. But that's how you would do that. Hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, Bobby, that's why I use an accountant, because sometimes you just don't got time for all this stuff, right? Let the pros do it. Yes, let the pros do it sometimes. Perfect. So the simple formula you want to know is basically anything that comes in minus anything that goes out in the name of your business equals your net profit. And this is the amount that you pay taxes on. Not every dollar that comes in, but after you deduct those expenses, what is left? That is what the IRS really cares about. That's the amount that you pay taxes on. Do these deductibles only apply to 1099s or employee W-2s as well? This is specifically for business-related income, so more your 1099 income. Employee W-2s, if you're an employee, you wouldn't be able to deduct work-related expenses specific to that job, if that makes sense. All right. All right, so taxes. As we know, your gross pay is not what you take home, right? That's not what you keep in your pocket at the end of the day. And this is true whether you're employed or, through an employer or if you're self-employed, right? Taxes, what are they? We know that this is this money that we have to send to the government, but why? Taxes are levied by federal government, state government, and local governments to pay for various services that benefit its citizens. That's the whole point of why we pay taxes. And so what income taxes are you responsible for as a business owner? That's what we want to get into. What are the types of taxes that we want to know about and that we can withhold money for? So the first one is, of course, federal withholding, probably the most popular tax that people know about. So income tax rates, they vary. It can be as low as 0%. It can be as high as 37% of your net business income. It really just depends on how much you earn. How much is your net profit will determine which tax bracket you fall into on the federal level. State income tax, typically 3 to 11% of your business income. Again, it depends on which state you reside in or that you're making the income from. There are, of course, a few states that don't have any state income tax. For example, New Hampshire, Florida, Washington State, there's a few states around, close by too, that don't have income taxes. So if you live in one of those, congratulations to you. That's less money coming out of your pocket for taxes, but something that most of us have to deal with and to set aside money for. Yes, Deidre.
I have a question. So as we're thinking about paying taxes, and you might get to this later, if you do get paid 1099 and you haven't had any taxes taken out, how much should you be setting aside of that money in order to make sure you pay the IRS?
We will get there.
Thank you.
Great question.
Okay.
Great question. We will get there. Perfect. So far we've had federal and we've had state, right? Two of the types of taxes you can think about. Then there's city income tax, which some people who live in certain large cities, I'm from New York originally, so I've had to pay New York City income tax as well during my lifetime. So it really only applies to certain large cities, but that can also be up to 10% of your business income, depending on, where you live and where you are. So another thing to be cognizant of. Then there's FICA taxes, right? Social Security and Medicare. If you're self-employed, these are also taxes that are not being taken out on your behalf, so therefore you have to pay them yourself. So Social Security, the total tax is 12.4% of your net profit. So how this works is that you pay half and your employer pays half. But in this case, you are your own employer, so therefore you pay both, right? That's how that works. So 12.4% for Social Security tax. And then Medicare tax, which is 2.9%. Again, same thing, how this would usually work. In the working world, people who are strictly W-2 income, you pay half of that, your employer pay half. Again, you are your own employer, therefore you are kind of paying both ends. So that is Social Security and Medicare, also known as FICA taxes when you're referring to both of those together. So paying federal taxes as a business owner. This is where we're getting into Deeja's question here. So as we know, an employee usually has income taxes withheld from their paycheck. So if you don't pay your tax through withholding, or you don't pay enough tax that way, you might have to pay what's known as estimated taxes, right? And if you're not required to make estimated tax payments, you might just pay any tax that's due when you file your return. Really just depends on those income thresholds. So estimated tax payments are due 4 times a year, quarterly. The first one was due on April 15th. So we just had a big deadline where we got a lot of payments out the door for our various clients. So that's the first quarter. Second quarter is due June 15th, then September 15th, and then January 15th of the following year for the fourth quarter. So if you're making a decent income, you're having a decent profit from your business, it's definitely something you're going to want to pay attention to so you don't end up owing a bunch of money when it comes time to file your return. And depending on how much money you owe, maybe potentially running into penalties for paying it late. So that's just something we all want to keep in mind. So rule of thumb. Calculate your running profit each quarter, sit down, calculate your inflows, your outflows, see what your net profit is. And rule of thumb, just to make it super simple, is most people recommend setting aside 30% of that number for taxes. Just as a general rule of thumb. Of course, we know it's going to be different depending on how much money you've made, your tax bracket, etc. But that's a good rule of thumb, just to make things simple. So this begs the question, do I even have to file a tax return? Some people are in this boat where you might be just getting started. You may not be making a lot of money yet from whatever you're doing, or have a huge profit or anything like that. So really what I want you to pay attention to, most people might be in this, toward the top of this chart here, where you're either single or married filing jointly. If you're under 65, you don't necessarily have to file a tax return until your income, your reportable income, is $12,400 for 2020. Just to let you know. Doesn't mean that you cannot, it just means you don't have to file one. If you're 65 or older, then that number is $14,050. And then married, you can look at the chart and see what that minimum threshold is. That's a common question that I get, at least, is like, do I have to file a tax return? It's like, maybe, depends on how much money you made. So that is one thing there. Another important note is that if you made less than the amount shown, but you had taxes withheld either from a W-2 income or other sources during the year, you might want to file a return anyway, because you most likely will just be getting that money back through a tax refund. So even though you don't meet the threshold, it's still worth considering if you've had money withheld in any way, taxes withheld in any way. All right. And it's also important to note that business losses, say you have W-2 income and then you also have business income, If you do happen to have a loss for that year from your business, it does help reduce your overall income for your tax picture. So it's just one important note to add in there. So now I'm going to show you a little chart. Don't let it overwhelm you. I'm going to explain exactly what you're looking at right now. So this is basically how a federal return works, the high level 10,000 foot overview, because this is something that a lot of people don't really understand exactly how taxes work and how they're calculated, right? When you're actually filing your tax return. So this is your personal tax return called a 1040, and how your business income affects your refund. So you start here, this total income box. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, right here. So we start here with total income, right? So this is where everything goes, your wages, any interest you might have earned on a bank account. Also, your business profit or loss goes in that total income section. That's why I have it in red there. So you kind of see where that gets plugged in on your tax return. If you had any capital gains or losses, from investing, anything like that, total income, right? So then we subtract out adjustments. So these are things like, did you contribute to an IRA this year? Do you have student loan interest that you paid this year that's deductible? Those are some examples, some common examples of adjustments to your income. And when you back those things out, that brings you to a very, very, very important number on your tax return, which many people became familiar with this year in light of all of the stimulus payments that were going on, adjusted gross income, otherwise known as AGI. This is the number that most things are based off of. When someone says it's income-based, they're most likely talking about your AGI, not your total income, if that makes sense. Just want to make that distinction there. So that is a very, very, very important number. This is also the number that you look at if you want to see what the income thresholds are for any kind of tax reduction or any type of tax income limitation for a tax benefit. That's the number that you're going to be looking at. So once we get to AGI, you subtract your deductions. Now with deductions, it's a fork in the road. There are two paths you can take. You can either do what's called itemized deductions or the standard deduction. Standard deduction is plain and simple. It's a standard number just depending on your filing status. So for example, if you were filing as a single person in 2020, that number would be $12,400. On the other hand, if you have lots of things you can deduct, you may own a home, you have real estate taxes that you pay, you may have charitable contributions, interest you're paying on a mortgage, things like that. If that stuff all exceeds that threshold number, in this case, $12,400, then you do whatever's more favorable for you, right? Whatever's the largest number for you to deduct. And that brings you to then your taxable income. This is now the step where you actually apply your tax rate, okay? So that 0 to 37% I was talking about, federal taxes, it's not on all your income. It's when you get to taxable income right here. After you subtracted all this stuff, that's the point where you apply your tax rate. So that gives you, of course, the percentage based on what your income is, will give you how much tax you have to pay or how much tax you owe for the year. Now, from that amount, there's still some things you could potentially back out to make your tax bill even lower. Things like education credits, if you're a college student or doing a qualifying training program, things like that, where you might qualify for some tax credits there, or the child tax credit. If you have eligible children, you back that stuff out. And then you consider any payments you've already made during the year. So say you've been paying estimated taxes or withholding money throughout the year. So when you net all of that out, that is how you actually get to how much you either still owe or how much needs to be refunded to you. So hopefully that all makes sense, because I feel like tax refunds are kind of this ethereal number. It's like, okay, well, I owe this, okay, or I'm getting this back, all right, but you don't really understand the flow throughs of how that's calculated. Hopefully this gives you a better idea or an understanding when you're actually looking at your tax return, what all those numbers actually mean. So hopefully that was helpful to go through with you all, to give you just a little bit more understanding when you're looking at your own tax return. This here is just a schedule of what the actual tax rates are. So as you see here, single taxpayers, it goes all the way from 0, 10% up to 37%, like I was mentioning before. And these are the income limits right here. In this case, it's taxable income you're looking at to see what the rate is that would be applied. So that's just there for reference. All right. So where exactly, it's in that total income section that we said before, but where exactly is business income reported on your tax return? For most people, you're just what's known as a sole proprietor, or you might have an LLC for yourself. It is reported on something called Schedule C. How many of you have heard of Schedule C before? Show of hands. Okay, great. Most of us have. Yeah, that's where your inflows and outflows for your business will live as a sole proprietor, as a single person, as a I wouldn't say single person, it's an individual person filing your tax return, not necessarily single as in marital status. Now, if you have a more complicated structure, which is probably a little bit less common, if you have a partnership, for example, it's a whole different type of tax return that you're going to need to file to show those inflows and outflows. And same thing with a corporation. It's a whole different type of tax return that you would need to file to show those income and outflows, a separate tax return just for the business. Yes.
Do you, as a sole proprietor, because this is where I'm at now, trying to figure out, do I need to establish my own tax ID number? I mean, my accountant does my taxes. So I'm just like, here's my stuff. But I've been thinking, do I need to get a business license and set up the whole thing, even though I file as a business, Deidre Woods actor? Do I need to have a separate a business license or a tax ID number?
Great question. So you don't need to have a separate tax ID if it's just you as the business. You don't necessarily need one, but you can get one if you'd like. You can go online on the IRS's website and request an EIN, a separate number that is basically just you, but just so you don't have to give your social security number all over the place, you can request another identifying number to identify you as a business. So it's optional. So not crucial, but can be, for people who want it. And business licensure, that's really industry specific, depends on exactly the kind of work that you're doing.
I just wanted to toss this out, and I have no idea if you're already going to talk about this, but I have paid an actor via their business for equity work. And that means that we have not taken out taxes, that they have had to file all of that on their own, and they've managed all of their own health insurance. Yep. But we've paid them via their business before. I don't think a lot of people know that that's an option. So rather than taking a W-2, you can actually get paid via a 1090, via your business for all of the work you would do at a company. And then it's a different way to approach yourself as a whole business. But I don't know if a lot of people know that option actually exists.
Yeah, it's definitely something you'll want to talk through. If you're being hired for, whatever job, you want to talk that through, because there are certain distinctions, where a business can treat you as an employee versus an independent contractor. For example, one of the big things to look at is, are you setting your own hours, or are we setting your hours? Are you doing work independently and, kind of invoicing us? What is the nature of the relationship where they're allowed to either treat you as an employee or as an independent contractor? So those are some of the things that sometimes certain businesses will be more or less strict about in the way that they pay people. Yes, Bobby.
I think the IRS has a term for those of us who are performers. It's called Qualified Performing Artist, or QPA. So using a sole proprietor as something, since they already have a name for us, just wanted to put that out there for those of you who never heard of it.
I never heard that. Thank you.
Oh, so glad I could help.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Kyle had a question too. What are the pros and cons of an LLC? If you do private lessons?
Great question. We actually recently did a video on LLCs and the pros and cons of one, and why most people think they need one, but they probably don't. So it really is, dependent on, personal preference. But the biggest singular reason why people set up LLCs as, individuals in business is really for liability. Because basically, if someone sues you as an individual in the course of your business, all of your personal assets are at risk in that sense. They can go after, your money, your personal bank accounts, things like that. With an LLC, it shields you from a bit of that risk. It only allows people to kind of, if there's a lawsuit of any kind, go after the assets of the LLC, of the business, and a lot of your personal assets are sheltered. So that is the singular reason, the biggest reason why most people opt to get an LLC, even just as an individual, individual running a business. So it really just goes depending on, what your personal preferences and your risk exposure in your particular industry and your personal appetite for risk as well. Yes.
Hi, may I follow up on that?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the screen right now in terms of partnership. Like, is it better, like say T and I wanted to like have private lessons, is it better to have one LLC that we both work for, or is it better to do like single business accounts that we've talked about so far?
Yeah, so that's a great question. If you are going into business with someone else, especially if it's not someone you're married to. If you're married, there's like a special qualifying thing where you don't have to have an LLC or have a partnership or anything like that if you're a married couple. But if you are not, if you're going to business with someone who you are unmarried to, that's usually when most people will look into strongly considering setting up an LLC. So that way, the responsibilities and the rights of each of the owners are perfectly spelled out, on paper. It just alleviates a lot of hassle in the end. When it comes to operations, unwinding things, who's responsible for what, it makes things a lot clearer. So that's what I would say. If you are going to be going into business together. Of course, if you want to run your own things separately, that's up to you to decide. Yeah. Great. All right. Love the questions. Keep them coming. So moving on to states, because we talked a lot about federal taxes just now, but let's also talk a little bit about state taxes. Which states do you actually need to file taxes in? This is a common question that I also get. Generally, it's anywhere that you've lived or worked in that year. So if you're traveling for work a lot or for your business a lot, you kind of want to keep track of where you've been and how long you've been working out of certain states. So if you work out of multiple states, best practice is to track the amount of days you spend working out of each place, so you can determine, or your accountant can then determine which states you actually need to file a return for, depending on how long you've been there. So I know with 2020 was a weird year for a lot of people. Some people were more mobile than usual. Some people were hunkered down in one place for longer than usual. So it's just something to keep in mind, going forward as we kind of get back out into the world. So just a note, because sometimes I do have some younger people who I'm speaking to, or people who might be in college. So being temporarily away, such as at college, doesn't count. You just file in your home state, wherever you would normally live when you're not at school. Okay. All right, I'm just looking at Bobby's comment. If account uses performing artists on your tax returns. Yes, okay, perfect. Yes, that's a great example of those, specific caveats if you do qualify. Yes, wonderful. All right, now, what should you do if, all of this is new, I owe a bunch of money to the IRS, I've just filed my tax return, help. What do I do now that I owe this big tax bill, which happens to a lot of people? So first things first, don't panic, okay? Let's breathe, inhale and exhale, it's gonna be okay. But also don't ignore the problem, all right? The IRS is not somebody you can just, put on mute and hope it goes away. They will never go away. So don't ignore the problem. Pay what you can as soon as possible. Just pay what you can. It's a sign of good faith. As long as they see that you're engaging and you're at least trying to pay, they'll work with you. And you can contact them to try to request a payment plan so that you can get this money, paid over time if you don't have all of it up front. And then to make sure you don't get into this situation again in future years, you want to, if you have W-2 income, you might want to update or increase your tax withholdings through that source. Or if you're purely self-employed, set aside more money for taxes going forward. Like we mentioned, that 30% of profit rule is a good one to stick by. Usually you should be in the ballpark with that. Yes. Is that a hand?
This is always, every time I have to fill out a W-4, like the first day of rehearsal, it's always where I'm like, what did I put? How many do I literally text my husband, hey babe, what am I, like I do this every single time.
Yes.
Now I file separately, marry but file separately. And I normally claim our one child. Mm-hmm. So do you put 0, 1, like if you want them to take out all now, because I don't want to have to owe later.
Right.
Or if you're being more conservative, like, no, don't take little. What number?
Yeah. The funny part is that there's no numbers anymore. They just redid this entire
Oh, yeah, that's
form last
true.
year, and they made it so much more complicated. It's like a whole mini tax return. It's so, even myself looking at it, I'm like, oh my goodness. It is such a drag. It's all different now.
Oh, because they have the one line saying if you have one, then you just put this amount. Like if you have one
there's
child,
no
then you
longer
find.
like the ones or the zeros, like how it was before. Now it's like, okay, what is your filing status? Like, how much do you anticipate making? Do you have more than one job? It's like so many questions for absolutely no reason.
Oh, no.
So that will probably take a little bit more time than we have for tonight
Okay.
to go through that. But yeah, I mean, it's new. It's new for everybody. It's a little bit more complicated, but I can definitely circulate resources afterward that can kind of walk you through it and hopefully make it a little bit easier.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Kelly, it's all different now, and most people do not like it. So
I feel like I just figured out the old version and then they completely changed it.
Exactly. That's exactly what has happened. I'm glad I haven't had to fill one out since it changed. I'm not looking forward to it. So yes. All right. Now, let's talk about some other taxes you might be looking at, especially if you have people who work for you. If you employ people, for example, you have actual employees who issue W-2s to, you'll be responsible for taxes, on their behalf, because now you're the business owner. Yes, dreams. We're speaking this into existence for everyone. So some of the things you have to put aside for them is, their Social Security and their Medicare. That's something you have to withhold and remit on the employee's behalf in a lot of cases. Federal income taxes, if they filled out the lovely W-4 and want you to withhold taxes from their check, you kind of have to do that. So that's going to be important for federal income tax withholding, as well as federal unemployment tax. This is important. This is something that employers have to pay. We've learned a lot about unemployment over 2020. Unfortunately, a lot of us have had to learn about that pretty quickly, but that's what it's for. That's why employers pay into the system, right? So that when people do lose their jobs, people can claim on that money and be able to sustain themselves while they're unemployed, except for nonprofits. Yes, this is assuming you're in a for-profit business that you're employing someone. Yes.
Wait. Nonprofits don't have to pay into unemployment?
Nonprofits have different rules than for-profit businesses. So there are unique tweaks to if you're running like a foundation or a nonprofit organization or something of that sort. It's a little different. So I'm speaking purely from the context of you are a for-profit business hiring someone that you're working with. Yes.
Y'all should see the actor budget I have to create with all of these columns in it to account for all of these taxes and the LNI plus all of the union taxes and all the union dues and all of the, it's very educational.
Great. Well, yes, hopefully I haven't scared you too much. Just want to make sure we all know, we all have a little bit more knowledge here. Great. So yeah, some of the things you need to be aware of if you have employees. Another thing is sales taxes. If you happen to be selling actual, products in the course of your business, which many people do, sales taxes are important. So it's important to note 45 states and DC have sales tax. So it's pretty popular. And states do use this money to pay for items like schools, roads, public safety, all that stuff. And it's what our sales taxes go toward. So businesses that sell a product or a taxable service must collect sales tax from their customers in those states. So this more so applies to product-based businesses, but there are also some services that might be considered taxable as well, where you need to charge your customers taxes. I'm sure all of us are used to paying them, but when you're on the other end of the line, it's important to know what your responsibilities are. So how to collect, report, and pay sales tax. So this is something that you have to do. So first of all, you have to determine if your product or service is subject to sales tax, something that you have to do research into, because not everything in every state is taxed the same way. So you want to look at the guidelines for where you are selling that item, that specific state. And if you determine that it is taxable, you want to register for a sales tax permit in that state. And then you have to calculate the sales tax rate that you have to charge for that state, collect it at the point of sale. a checkout cart and then send that sales tax return and payment to the state. So it sounds like a lot of steps, and there's a lot of states you might have to do this for. The good news is that if you're already using like a simple point of sale software, usually they'll calculate a lot of this stuff for you. They'll at least take care of how much should you be charging this customer because they live in X state. They'll collect that money from the customer automatically, and all you'll have to do is then just take that money and send it to the respective states once it comes in and file their appropriate returns. So it makes it a lot easier when you're using point of sale software and sales tax filing services. So some other important tax forms. We've been talking about 1099s. There was a little bit of a change in 1099s this year as well, which I'm not sure if all of us know about, but some important tax forms that you might receive as a tax, as an entrepreneur, or you might issue as an entrepreneur. So kind of both ends. So there's a 1099 MISC, which most of us are probably familiar with, that you might have received at some point over the life of your career. If you are the one issuing it though, the deadline is March 1st. If you're filing by paper, or March 31st, if you're filing electronically. So what is this for? What actually is it? When do you have to issue it? If you are paying people or companies on behalf of your business in the course of business, if they are not registered as a corporation or an S Corp or something like that, and you've paid them at least $600 within a calendar year, you will most likely need to issue them a 1099, whether it's a 1099 MISC or new, what they've broken out, called a 1099 NEC. So 1099 NEC stands for non-employee compensation. So if you paid an individual, say I, had Deidre review something for my business and I paid her $700. Her as an individual, that's non-employee. She's not my employee, but she did a service for me for the course of my business. I would need to issue her a 1099 NEC for that those payments. And it's, the total summation of payments over the year. So whether I paid her all that at one time or over the course of the entire year, as long as it's at least $600, I would need to issue her that form. So that is the difference. Anybody else who's not, an individual or independent contractor who you're paying will get a 1099 MISC. So for example, I had to issue one for an attorney that I worked with in 2020 as an example. And there's a resource that I'll leave with you. It's called 1099online.com. That is a place that I heard of from a fellow CPA that I actually used this year to file my 1099s, and it was pretty simple. So just a resource if you ever need to issue one, you have a resource as to where to go to actually get that filed nice and easy. So something to keep in mind if you're on the issuing end of any of these forms. And then best practice is if you're paying someone, obtain a W-9 for each contractor you pay before you pay them, ideally, or when you pay them. That way you're not on January 15th running around, trying to collect W-9s from all these people to determine whether or not you need to send them a 1099. I've been there. Don't be like me. So yes, do that. Yes, Jess.
And just as a helpful tip for artists, because I know y'all fill out those W-9s, but I would just, you can get a digital one online, and anytime anybody's going to pay you, any company, if they don't ask for it, just send it to them anyway, because you will actually help yourself in the future when you're trying to track down all of those little all your 1099s at the end of the year. If you offer it to them before they even ask, I know some of the smaller theaters can get kind of bogged down and that gets lost. And anytime you move, just send all the places you've worked in the past year a new W-9 with your new address. It's so easy, but keep it on your computer. It's the simplest thing that you can do for yourself at the end of the year.
Yes, great advice. Yes, if you move, because a lot of companies will be actually mailing it to you physically. So you want to make sure they have the most updated information so that you're not having your sensitive information getting lost or floating around in the mail somewhere and getting into the wrong hands. So yes, I see another hand somewhere. All right. Great. So now when it's time to scaling, you're growing your business, things are getting, more than just you can probably handle. Some words of advice. Hiring a diligent attorney who you can go to for any complex situations, help you draft any important business documents. Maybe you're looking into finally starting that LLC, getting that up and running. A diligent attorney who can help you out with all that stuff so we can all make sure we're doing things decently and in order. Hiring a tax professional, whether it's a CPA or an enrolled agent, to help you with tax filing and compliance as things get more complex, definitely something to consider. And also helping you with bookkeeping, if that's also, taking up more time. No one goes into this industry to do bookkeeping, I'm sure. We're here to do the fun stuff. So if that's something that you feel you need to outsource later on, definitely do so when your business is ready for that. Double check any insurance coverages, especially in, as artists in fields where, you are the biggest asset to your business. So you want to make sure on the personal front that, say anything ever, God forbid, happened to you or your limb or anything you need to actually do your work and to make your money, that you have, disability coverage or other types of coverages, just in case, always plan for the worst and hope for the best is always my motto. So insurance for that, if you need specific types of insurance for any specific industry lines that you're in or that you operate in, something you want to keep in mind as well. And make sure you have a good handle on employment law for your state as you start to hire employees and things like that. So that's really important. And lastly, have fun. Entrepreneurship, it's an interesting journey. Enjoy every single part of it. So like I said, taxes, this was all, I'm sure, boring stuff, but hopefully is interesting to you all. And it's important to just have fun along the way on this crazy journey. And then before we wrap up, I also just wanted to talk about budgeting, how to create a budget that you'll actually want to stick to. How many of you guys have like an automatic, maybe even subconsciously negative reaction when you heard the word budget? By show of hands. Don't be ashamed. All right. Yes. Yeah, we want to change that. We want to change that today. And how many of you budget right now? If you're brave enough to say that. Sort of. Yes, I see a lot of sort of kind of trying to do a thing. Hopefully we're not all doing the whole checking the bank account thing, and that determines how much money we have for the day. That's what we want to move away from, and actually, set a plan and set a plan to moving forward. All right. So quickly, some budgeting myths. First of all, budgets are not one size fits all. All right. There's no one correct way to budget. All right. There are so many different ways that you can slice and dice things and put things together in a way that works for you. So let's put that myth to rest right now. Another budgeting myth is that budgets are boring. Budgeting gets a really bad rep sometimes, but I personally get super excited about budgeting. Maybe I'm just a money nerd. I don't know. I love this stuff, but budgeting to me is not boring. I actually get pretty excited when I do my budget because I can see, where my money can actually go to this month and what can I actually do. It's more about what can I do than what can I not do, right? That's what we want to reframe that mindset. What can my money do for me rather than what can it not do or what do I have to miss out on? I like to say your money can buy you anything, but it can't buy you everything. So what is that anything going to be for me this month? That's really what your budget answers for you. Budgets are restrictive. No, they're not. Like I just said, it can be anything that you want it to be. It doesn't need to be restrictive. It is not something that is holding you back in life. It's something that's going to help you move forward and make good decisions for yourself and for your family and for anyone else who you're looking to impact in this world through your dollars. Budgeting is complicated. It will be as complicated as you make it. It does not have to be complicated at all. It can be super simple, super high level, or you can track everything down to the penny. There's no right answer. It really comes down to what is comfortable for you, what works, and what you'll stick to. Another myth is that you're going to get it right the first time. Probably not going to get it right the first time. Even professionals don't get it right the first time. Your budget is an evolving, living, breathing document. Okay. It's not going to always stay the same. You're not always going to get it right the first time. You might learn that, okay, I actually needed to spend more on this and I needed to spend less on this. Not going to be perfect the first time around. It's an iterative process. So hopefully that lays some fears to rest about what budgeting is really about. So some keys to creating a successful budget. I like to start with my non-negotiables. I go in order of importance. So what is that non-negotiable for you? Is it that, I need to make sure I'm saving at least $100 a month, and that's very important? Or, I'm really trying to get out of my student loan debt right now, so that's what's of critical importance to me. What is that non-negotiable for you? Some of you may or may not be religious, and tithing is something that's super important to you. What is that non-negotiable for you that comes first above any other priority with your finances? Start there. Really go in that prioritization order, because it really makes it easier when it comes down to, okay, where do I need to focus more attention on versus not? Makes it a lot easier. Also, remember your why. We like to think of budgets as simply dollars and cents, but really your budget is a reflection of your future, your plans, your values. Remember your why. What is it that you're trying to achieve through this plan? Is it, well, I'm going to budget and I'm going to make sure that of my budget, this amount of money goes into retirement, so that way I can breathe easy when I'm older and my future self will thank me? Or is it, I'm going to carve off $20 to go into my kids' college fund, so that way, they don't need to struggle with student loans like I did? Like, what is your why? And keep that forefront of mind, so that whenever you're tempted to spend money on something that doesn't align with your why, doesn't align with your values, you're thinking about what you're giving up in that process, right? Also, some tips for inconsistent income specifically, right? When you have ebbs and flows, especially in the world of entrepreneurship, your income is not going to be the same. You have some really, really great months, and then some months where you make little of nothing, right? So some tips: put yourself on a salary of sorts based on your lowest monthly estimate. What is the lowest? Like, look back over the past couple of years if you've had that length of longevity with your business, and see what was the lowest that I made over the past couple of years. And really put yourself kind of on a salary of sorts, using that as a baseline. Of course, if you make more, great. You might choose to put some, definitely don't spend all the more that you make in that month. Let's put some aside so that when you do have a down month, you're able to have that as a fallback, or something like that. Or, if you choose to, you can treat yourself just a little bit more that month, and fit more of your wants in there than your actual, this needs to be paid type of bills. All right. Using any excess money intentionally, like I just said, and keeping a sizable cash reserve, because with inconsistent income, you need to be, you probably will need to have more cash than the usual person who has a 9-to-5 job, right? Because with those inconsistencies, there'll be some months where you have to pull on that cash, and there'll be some months where you have a lot and you maybe are adding back to it. So it really is an ebb and a flow, but that's why it's important to probably have a little bit more cash set aside than most people for that reason. So those are just 3 tips that I usually like to give to people that have irregular or inconsistent income. And now, how do you know if your budget is good, right? So you put down your numbers, you put in your inflows, you put in your outflows. First thing, is it realistic? Right? Reality check. Compare what you've written down to what you've actually spent over the past few months. Is it realistic? Can you actually stick to it? Because, you're not going to quit everything cold turkey, right? If you decided, I want to cut back in this area or spend more in this area, it has to be something you can stick to, or else what's going to happen, you're just going to get frustrated and throw the whole thing out the window and just not budget at all, which is not what we want to do, right? So we want to make sure that it is working for us. So we don't want to make drastic cuts in places just because it looks good, or it looks good in the moment and you realize you can't stick to it. So make sure it's realistic. Also, is it helping you achieve your goals? Another important question, because really that's all your budget is. It's a reflection of your goals and values. And then, of course, are you cash flow zero or positive? Because if you're negative, it doesn't necessarily work, right? So if you're at a deficit, you really have to ask, where can you realistically cut down? Or, more favorably for me at least, it's not always about the scarcity. It's how can you make more money so that your budget can work for you in the future, right? A lot of people like to preach, okay, we're going to have to cut something out. Not necessarily. There's also the other end where you can also try to make more money. So what things can you add to, your services or your business, or maybe something seasonal, to make that budget work for you in the future? Lots of different ways we can slice and dice this. Some budgeting and cash flow management tools. Again, there is no one right way to do this. Everybody has different personalities and preferences. So some people love to use Excel, like my husband, tracked every penny in Excel. Never could be me. but bless his heart. So that's what he loves to use. I personally am a fan of using an app. I use the app called Good Budget specifically, but there's lots of other apps. There's Mint, there's Every Dollar, you Need a Budget, or YNAB as it's called. So many different apps that do things in different ways. There are planners, people who actually use physical planners to budget. And there's cash envelopes. Where people literally, when they get paid, they go cash their check or take their money out of their account. See, just gave me a thumbs up, and they get the envelope. They literally write rent on the envelope and put that money inside the envelope. Cash envelopes. It works for some people. Again, never could be me, but there is no one right answer, right? That's the beauty of this. Personal finance is just that, personal. So we all have to find the method that works for us, right? So what method do you find useful? For those of you who have other ways that you like to track your cash flow, feel free to share in the comments as well. Yeah, perfect. See, help you pay off your student loans. You do what works, right? You got to do what works. Got to do what works. And, if you haven't used any of these methods before, maybe you're thinking about something new. This maybe gives you some ideas to what you might want to try out over the next couple of months. Try it different ways, just see what you like, see what sticks. All right. And tracking cash flow is even more important when you have irregular, inconsistent income, because you really have to be on top of exactly what's coming in and out so that you don't kind of get lost in it. All right. So definitely would encourage you to do that. Yes. Numbers apps on Apple products. Beautiful. All right. Sticking to your budget as we're winding down here. Use credit cards regularly only if you think you can manage them. So credit cards are wonderful things. I use them religiously. However, they're not for everybody. So only use it if you think that you can manage them. All right. That's my word of caution. Yes. Dedicated credit card for business expenses, streamline business expense reporting. Yes, me too. I have one credit card that's solely for business expenses. Makes it so much easier to track, so much easier to find things, right? Yes. Pay off in full every month. Yes. Please do that. Please pay them off in full every month. And, it's not a lesson on credit, but that's how you help build your credit and keep your good credit. Definitely. All right. If you'll be inclined to spend more money or break your budget when you're using a credit card, happens to some people. When you're using plastic, it's one of the benefits. A lot of people like the cash envelopes. When the cash is done, you're done. You don't have any more money to use. It's literally done. With a credit card, you might be tempted to just, it's just, $2 more for this thing. I'll throw it in there, and you can easily spiral into a larger issue. So yes, important thing to note. Put it somewhere that'll be hard for you to access. If that is you, put your credit card somewhere. Don't necessarily close them. That's a whole nother story for another day, a whole nother lesson on credit. But put them somewhere that'll be hard for you to access. And whenever you are tempted to spend money on something that doesn't align with your budget, again, think about your why and what you're sacrificing by making that purchase. And also, don't be afraid to tell people if something's not in your budget, okay? Don't let anybody bully you out of your dreams. Just because you can afford it doesn't mean that, I need to spend my money here, all right? The pressure can be real, whether that's from family, friends, to tell you how to spend your money. Don't let anyone tell you how to spend your money. Not even me. Take what I say with a grain of salt, all right? What do I know? Don't let anyone bully you out of your dreams, okay? So make sure, zone it all out. You know what you're doing. If you have a plan for your money, you know what your values are. Spend your money accordingly. All right. So I have really enjoyed spending this time with all of you. This is just a free download for you. This is what I call my master spreadsheet. It's like the most oversimplified yet powerful way that I've found to map out my inflows and outflows. It really guides you through budgeting and helps you get a grip on your inflows and outflows step by step. So how you would use this is, if you're employed, you fill in the sections with your monthly gross income, all your deductions, till you get to this little gold net pay right here. If you're self-employed, filling in the amount of money you pay yourself from your business each month, or, if you're currently unemployed, how much money you're pulling from savings or getting from other sources, you put that in first. And then you list all of your expenses in order of priority, right? We start with those non-negotiables, housing, things that are important. So list that all in order of priority. So that way you can see what that bottom line is, and then you can then assess, okay, well, where do I need to put tweaks in? I can look at these numbers, look at the past few months numbers. Is this realistic or not? All those things that we talked about to make tweaks and kind of just lay things out. So this is what I have for you. I see a couple of you are already grab that. Yes, it will ask you for your email. Yes, it will ask you for your email, which automatically adds you to my email list, by the way. But if you do not ever want to hear from me ever again, feel free to unsubscribe. Okay, I do not will not hold any hard feelings. But this is just something that I want to share with you, just to kind of put into practice all the things that we've talked about today. So again, thanks for having me tonight, and it's great. This was great being with you guys. Hopefully it was helpful.
Thank you, Akeiva.
So helpful. I'm like, I haven't talked about taxes and budgeting with like a group of artists before. So this is really cool to all be in the room together and just kind of dive in head first. Thank you so much.
Of course. You can see my contact information here if you do actually want to hear more from me or find me anywhere. Like I said, I primarily hang out on YouTube at The Bemuse. You can follow me on Instagram. That's my email. And this last link is if you are actually looking for a financial planner to work with long-term for your personal finances. It's a great site to find, CFPs like myself that you can work with on a comprehensive level. So just a link there.
Thank you, Akeiva. And I know that we're kind of at time, but I just wanted to ask, do you have time for like maybe 1 or 2 questions?
I'm happy to take any more questions if we have them, yes.
Making sure that
I'm
anybody
just glad you guys aren't too tired for me right now.
No, not at all. Y'all, Akeiva's on the East Coast, so it is what it's
11:32.
It's 11:30. So she's
Wow.
woo. Thank you for doing this time difference for us. But I just want to make sure if there are any other like blank holes of knowledge or anything that anybody wants to offer up as a question, that we create space to do that during this time. Everybody's awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all of this information. Seriously. Yes. And if y'all, I just tell you, go check out her YouTube channel because
yes,
Deidre and I, yes, tell them it's good. It's got so many cool financial tricks that I would never have thought to even explore. So
yeah,
it makes it fun too. Like you start to think about the things you can do with your money and move from that like scarcity mindset. I love that you brought that up instead of thinking, oh, I can't do this. Like, well, what little, as artists teaching classes like on your own, like little things that you can do to make that extra income. I think we're always kind of thinking about that. So hearing a financial planner tell us like, yes, do that. I think it's good to hear.
Yeah, of course. I love to live from an abundance mindset. Like whenever I face an obstacle, it's like, okay, well, how can I make this happen? Let's not think about the fact that I can't do it right now, So hopefully I leave that with all of you. And all of you are still smiling. So hopefully that means that you learned something today. I didn't scare all of you away.
No, I'm excited. Very honestly, my husband and I, everybody's been in this crazy pandemic, right? We all have experienced a change in lifestyle, a change in work opportunities, everything. And I have just been so anxious because it's gotten to that point where we have to rebudget. Like we have to rebudget because our life is different and we've used savings to roll over for so long, but now we've hit the wall and I've had so much anxiety about rebudgeting and just like stepping my foot into that water now in this new reality. And so I feel like after last week with Chandra and Janelle, and then this week with you, Akeiva, I'm like, do it. It's gonna be better. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I love it.
Deidre, do you want to share about next month and next day?
Sure, of course. So next month, make sure you join us. Our theme for May is revitalizing our village. And we are going to have to talk about artistic programming moving forward at Village Theater. What will Village Theater support look like moving forward? We're going to be joined by some artistic leadership members from Village Theater. And it's going to be on a different day than we usually have it. Our first one for sure, which is May 7th. And we're, right? Is it May 7th?
May 6th or 7th?
I think it's the 7th because that's a Thursday.
Oh no, the 6th is a Thursday. The 7th is a Friday.
Okay, the 6th. Don't listen to me. The 6th. And Jerry Dixon's going to join. Jess is going to be on the panel. Brandon, Ivy, and Tim is going to be on the Tim. So come. It's going to be great. I think it'll be a good opportunity for people to see what's been happening at Village Theater after making new commitments to the community and as an organization. It'll give everyone a chance to hear about that from the people who are making those decisions. And then we're going to have a panel for the second class where people will get a chance to ask questions, and it's going to be great.
Yeah. So our goal is that these are kind of more town halls. So we're going to share with you what artistic programming is going to look like moving forward in the future, because we know, well, we talk about it all the time. Y'all haven't been talking to us all the time, and you want to talk to us and you want to hear what's going on. And then we'll be leaving it open as well for a big old Q&A. So if you have questions about what's happening at Village, what can I expect? What are auditions going to look like? What will the rehearsal room look like? It's time for we're going to open it up, be there to answer your questions, support you with whatever you might need. So, and then, yeah, it'll hopefully be very exciting. We won't be recording those, so they feel truly like a town hall. So that'll be something to encourage folks to really attend live.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're really excited, and this is actually really nice to see all of your faces and some new faces. So I appreciate it. And again, thanks, Akeiva.
Thank you. Get some sleep, Akeiva.
Will do.
I'll play us some music as we head out, but y'all enjoy the rest of your night.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.